So I want to take a few minutes here to untangle what unconformities are, because I understand that this can be just a little bit difficult in understanding how to recognize these. First of all, we have to realize that an unconformity is representing an erosional surface. And we have to recognize these unconformities when we're telling our stories of our rock sequences. So what this means is, let's say here what I find is, let's say I have the deposition of these rock layers. Then it's exposed to the air, erosion comes along, erases some of these rock layers, right, leaving behind this uneven surface, and then later in time I'm going to get the deposition of new rocks. Well, I have to recognize this unconformity surface, because I could be missing maybe 10 years there, or maybe I'm missing 10 million years. Either way, I'm missing time. And if you were trying to tell the story of this whole rock sequence and you forgot to say that you were missing time, it would be like trying to read your favorite book with the middle 50 pages ripped out of it. It wouldn't make any sense. So we have to recognize these unconformities. Now, when we give these unconformities names, it's actually really very simple. So I want you to follow these following steps. There are only 3 types of unconformities. If you follow these steps, it's going to be very simple to figure out what kind of unconformities you're looking at, because we name them based on geometry. So it's very simple. So the first question you're going to ask yourself is, are the rocks below the unconformity flat or folded? So are the rocks below the unconformity, I'm going to say unconformity as you see, flat or folded? Now, remember, we're going to look below the unconformity because anything that's above it happened afterwards. So we're not concerned about that. So let's take a look what I mean here. So if my rocks are flat, so what that means is I have deposition that occurred, right? And then erosion came in, took some of it away, leaving me with this really uneven surface, right? And then maybe I got deposition that happened later. But you see that my rocks below are flat? If my rocks are flat below the unconformity, we call this a disconformity. If my rocks are folded, which, remember, what this means is my rocks would initially start flat lying. Okay, some tectonic pressure happened to them and then made them folded. All right, so let's say now they look like this. Then erosion comes in, wipes some of it away, leaving behind this really uneven surface. So if you notice, my rocks below are folded, right? They're at an angle. Even if my rocks looked like this, say here's my unconformity, they're just tilted. Anytime my rocks are at an angle, we're going to call them folded. If it's folded, we call this angular. Very simple. So you're always going to have one of the two. Either your rocks are going to be flat as a disconformity, or they're going to be folded as an angular. Now, there's one extra word we can add. So the next question you're going to ask yourself is there an igneous intrusion? If your answer was no, then you're just going to stick with either disconformity or angular. If your answer is yes, we're going to go to the next part. So if you answered yes, the last question you're going to ask yourself is, did the intrusion get eroded at the unconformity? So let me show you what I mean. So if we're going to answer yes, let's see what that means. So here, let's say I have my rocks, they get deposited. Here I have an igneous intrusion, right? So I've drawn a dike here that comes up across. Erosion comes in, erases some of this material, leaving behind that uneven surface. So you see how my igneous intrusion here goes up to the unconformity, but it doesn't cross it? That means it got eroded. Part of it got wiped away at that erosional event at the unconformity. So all I do is add the word nonconformity. That's all I do. So if we want to give the technical name for this, so let's give the whole name. So let's go through those steps. Are my rocks below the unconformity flat or folded? Hopefully you said flat. So we're going to use the word disconformity. Now, do I have an igneous intrusion? Yes. Did the igneous intrusion get eroded at the erosional event? Yes. So then I add the word nonconformity. So this is technically called a disconformity nonconformity. Now, let me give you some examples of a no, where I might have an igneous intrusion, but it doesn't get eroded. And there's two examples I can show you. So let's say I have something that looks like this. Here I have some rock layers, and I have an igneous intrusion that goes like this. It cuts across everything. Now, I do have an igneous intrusion, but it clearly did not get eroded at the unconformity. You see how it's cutting across the unconformity? So that tells me that this igneous intrusion actually happened after the unconformity. So there's no way it could have gotten eroded. Another no would be, let's say I have something like this. Here's my rock layers. And let's say my igneous intrusion just goes up to here. So if I have something like this, can I tell which came first? The unconformity or the intrusion? No, I can't tell because they don't interact. So we don't add the word there. So there's two examples of no's. So let's go through a couple here. Let's say, let me draw a few here. Alright, so let's figure out what we have here. So let's walk through those steps. It's hard to color all this igneous intrusion in. Alright, so are my rocks below the unconformity flat or folded? Hopefully you said folded. So what word do I use? Angular. Do I have an igneous intrusion? Yes. Did my igneous intrusion get eroded at the unconformity? Yes. So all I do is add the word nonconformity. Alright, let's take a look at another one. Let's say I've got one that looks like this. Okay, so are my rocks below the unconformity flat or folded? Hopefully you said flat, so what word do I use? Disconformity. Now, do I have an igneous intrusion? Yes. Did my igneous intrusion get eroded at the unconformity? No. So all this is just a plain old disconformity. So hopefully this helps you understand the differences here between the different types of unconformities.